Welcome to the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and Biggs. He is Grindberg. I am Biggs. We are steeped in the middle of free agent season, and some players have been moving. There's been a lot of player motion. We're getting ready for the NFL draft. Some pro days are going off. Teams are looking at rookies to rebuild their teams or to add on to their teams, replenish in the draft. But they're also throwing contracts around, big body contracts for a lot of guys who are moving teams. And we covered the winners in our last episode. Some of the guys that we think are going to benefit the most from their new situations. Let's talk about a few guys who we think are going to suffer because of how free agency has panned out. Last week, you hit hard on the quarterbacks as winners. I'm going to hit hard on the quarterbacks as losers. So let's take a look at that. And I'm going to start. Well, before I do, how you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a busy week, a lot of movement in the NFL, some, big contracts throwing around, like you mentioned, some winners, some losers, a couple big names that we have in our spotlights this week, Biggs, that our viewers are going to have to stick around to get the insight and the analysis on those two big name players that we think are losers in the situation headed in. But without further ado, Biggs, get into your number 3 guy.
Well, I hate one of yours. So before I start, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. If you like what we have to say, go ahead and comment down below. If you hate what we have to say, comment down below. My first big off-season chaos loser is Aidan O'Connell. Of course, I have to give a Raiders bend to most of my content just because I'm so locked into it. And Aidan O'Connell is a guy who, of course, I've been tracking over the last couple of years. He has some production analytics that are very, very similar to CJ Stroud, who is, looked upon as a franchise quarterback. Aidan O'Connell is from the same rookie class, although he's a little bit older. Also played in the Big Ten in his college career, and their last 16 game stat lines are very, very eerily similar. I feel like Aidan O'Connell has the potential to be handed the starting gig, and I've maintained it over the last year and a half. The Raiders went out and traded for Geno Smith. Now, technically, it was a trade, not a free agent signing, but it is in the calendar that we're calling free agency season. And Aidan O'Connell will not be the starter in Las Vegas in week 1 unless something catastrophic happens to Geno Smith in training camp. So Aidan O'Connell is a big old loser.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he had the opportunity last year. They just didn't give him the keys, like you mentioned. And now it looks like they're gonna, he's gonna be waiting in the wings now as just a kind of like a backup kind of role. So yeah, definitely.
I want to make a team of just guys, not for fantasy purposes or anything, but make a team like a roster of guys who have talent but just kind of got screwed along the way. Aidan O'Connell would be the quarterback. Treylon Burks would be the starting wide receiver.
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, just your all-star lineup there. Yeah,
Michael Mayer would be the tight end.
There, there you have it. Well, I'm going to talk about a guy that I know, is close to your heart. You had him pegged as, one of your gems last year, rookie gem, Jalen McMillan, who had a great 2024, scoring 16 plus fantasy points in his last 5 games. But that injury to Chris Godwin got him inside the lineup. And I was hoping that, this year that potentially Godwin would part ways with the Bucs, and that would really open the door for Jalen McMillan to really secure that role as the number 2 wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The writing was on the wall. It looked like it was going to happen, but Chris Godwin ended up signing that 3-year, $66 million extension. That significantly changes the outcome or the outlook, especially for McMillan, who is going to have to wait a little bit in the wings now. He's going to have to wait for a more of an opportunity now for maybe potentially Godwin or Evans to get sidelined again. Very similar to, what Biggs's take was at the beginning of last year. He's got all the talent, but he's going to have to maybe wait in the wings now just a little bit longer. And it's unfortunate news, but like I said, there's still a lot of potential for this wide receiver. 16 plus fantasy points in the last 5 games. game. So that's a huge situation. So we know that he can fill in right away when needed. So, and he might actually have the talent there to surpass Godwin at some point in this season if things go, in his direction. So situation to monitor, but unfortunately for me, Jalen McMillan does lose out because of Chris Godwin signing.
Thanks. I hate it. Yeah. First of all, Chris Godwin has to show that he's fully recovered and fully healthy. And then I mean, I feel like the Buccaneers do have kind of a good eye on that. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed him to the extension that they signed him to. It's bad news, bad news, bad news for Jalen McMillan, which is sad to me. Although, on the other hand, if you are in a dynasty league, wait the first few games of the season where McMillan doesn't get a whole lot of targets and then go snatch him up everywhere. Because if you want to talk about a guy who will be primed for a third-year breakout, I think McMillan is that dude.
Yeah, I love Jalen McMillan. I think he's going to be a future, and he proved it last year. One of the most successful rookies out there. So there is opportunity for him, but he just takes that step back because of it. He's not going to be that top 24 wide receiver that maybe we would have been ranking him as such if Godwin wasn't around. So Biggs, who do you got as your next guy?
My next guy is somebody who, at this point in history, is very much maligned, and that's Aaron Rodgers, erstwhile of the University of California Golden Bears. I've I've been a big A-Rod fan for most of his career, but the last couple of years, something has gotten into his head, and he has not operated on a level in like culturally that kind of fits with what teams are trying to do. And right now he has been kicked off of one team. He's tried to court another team who has in Minnesota, who has a very young quarterback that they want to see out on the field. He's trying to get a deal done with them, but they don't seem to want him very much, which could just be a play on his part to get him signed to Pittsburgh for a bigger deal. Pittsburgh having moved on from Justin Fields, but still trying to figure out what to do with Russell Wilson. It's just a mess. And if Rodgers, I want to say, if he hadn't been such a jerk over the last couple of years, he'd have found a landing spot pretty quick. Now, his production isn't necessarily going to see the level it was last year. Last year, he was coming off an Achilles tear, and we've kind of figured that it was going to take him some time to shake that off. He didn't play at his Aaron Rodgers MVP Hall of Famer level in New York, and he could see a big comeback year. He could be a good comeback candidate. But it doesn't seem like any team is really going after him. He hasn't signed yet, and that makes him a loser.
Yeah, that is a situation here. You think that he would have been signed by now? Potentially teams floating around there. The Giants potentially could be in the market for Rodgers. The Steelers. What are your thoughts on that? Those kind of landing spots.
I feel like the Giants would have signed him right off the bat if they had any interest in him. It would definitely insulate their first round pick. They have a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, and it would just create more angles for them to approach their team build with if they knew that Aaron Rodgers was there and in the building. The Steelers are in a similar situation. Justin Fields is gone. Russell Wilson is a question mark at this point. They don't have a high level starting quarterback, and Minnesota doesn't seem to want Rodgers very much because they got rid of Darnold so that they could play JJ McCarthy. Why would they then bring in somebody else to sit JJ McCarthy? So we'll see what happens with him, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, another situation that currently does not look good, and that's a situation for George Pickens. And I'm not saying that I'm losing faith in his situation, but he could have, see some brighter roads ahead if he does end up getting traded and, see in a situation that might be better for his wheelhouse at this part of his career. But bringing in DK Metcalf there really put some red flags. Very similar style wide receiver skill set. They don't even have a quarterback right now, like a competent one under contract. So a lot of red flags here for George Pickens, but I'm still a little bit optimistic about his situation potentially with the trade. Teams that are, big wide receiver bodied need, potentially, like the Bills could use him potentially. I know they have a couple guys in their system, maybe Carolina Panthers, the Tennessee Titans looking for a wide receiver potentially. So there's a couple situations here that, George Pickens, if moved, could be a winner. But currently right now, with the landscape of the, run first Steelers, I'm a little bit concerned about the outcome. DK Metcalf getting $150 million contract, and that's outside of the wheelhouse for the Steelers to go out and get a big name player in free agency. So it just shows that they're in on Metcalf, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to have two very similar style wide receivers. Although Metcalf isn't as good with the contested catches, he is, a big bodied wide receiver that plays physical on the outside. So I'm just a little bit worried here about that situation for Pickens. And talent aside, he's got some issues with, his attitude as well, which is raising some concerns. And could he be the next Chase Claypool, leaving the Steelers and, floating away into nothing? You never know. But currently, a loser for me right now in this free agent market. What about you, Biggs? What are your thoughts there?
Sadly, and in Dynasty, I'm trying to move off of him, although the interest isn't very high right now. I think attitude is the main Pickens problem. And if he hadn't had those attitude problems towards the end of last season, I don't think the Seahawks do what they did with DK, because I was looking for a silver lining in the whole situation. And so I started to look at their kind of their route trees, what they do as wide receivers. It is sorry. They are very, very similar, and we knew that, but I didn't know how close until I started digging. And really, primarily they are go route guys. They do have some success running slants, and then the major difference in their top three routes that they're asked to run is that DK Metcalf runs a lot of digs where he lines up on the outside, goes down the field, and then cuts straight across. And then Pickens is a curl guy, so he'll run the same route, but he'll stick close to the sideline and come back. That's the only real difference I see in those two. And you want diversity in your routes run out on the field. If you're running both of the guys at the same time and they're both doing the same thing, then all you do is just keep a third safety back, and you can handle everything. So I feel like the DK Metcalf was a vote of no confidence in George Pickens, and they're likely going to be looking to move on from him as soon as they get a chance to. If they start the season and George Pickens and DK are on the field together, I feel like whatever quarterback is running the show in Pittsburgh is going to be looking DK's way. And let's remember, it's an Arthur Smith offense. So how much is that offense going to support two wide receivers? So all the way around, I think Pickens just got absolutely destroyed in this free agency period.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because we were kind of really high on him last year, and just he had a promising season, 900 yards. I think he had 6 touchdowns, so pretty good season altogether, but just faded out near the end there when they went more run heavy again. And yeah, it's just not a good situation there. So before we get into the spotlights, Biggs, I know our viewers are looking forward to hearing what you have to say, because after the fire you brought last week, I'm excited to hear what you got to say this week. But why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about what we're working on about the rookie guide that's going to be released after the draft?
So we have a whole team of guys who are digging deep into the rookie profiles, monitoring the Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl performances, monitoring the combine analytics, monitoring the college production, and we're going to be forming it into nice little bite-sized pieces for all you guys, so that you can go into your rookie dynasty drafts and even your rookie redrafts and have a little bit of an edge on what each of these rookies means. Do they fit your build? Are they going to have the landing spot? We will release it after we have landing spots for everybody, so we'll have some pretty good analysis on what we can expect from them. Is a running back going to a team that doesn't have a starting running back, so that's a high draft capital guy that is likely going to be the starter? Is it another guy who was taken in the 5th or 6th round that does have some third down upside, and he might carve out a role because he's filling a need? Is the wide receiver a wide receiver 1? Is he a wide receiver 3? Does he line up in the slot primarily? Is he a former tight end? Those kinds of things. We will have all that analysis for you, and just help you win more leagues next year like we did last year.
Absolutely. You're going to be able to find all that on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. Be sure to get your premium subscription there and become part of the team and community. Now, Biggs, let's get into your spotlight.
I always forget that I'm wearing my UC Davis Aggies hat in that photo, and it's backwards. I've had a couple of Davis football players come into the store the last few days. Got good conversations in with them. Both of them defensive backs, but nonetheless, it's been pretty cool to talk to them. Anyway, I'm not bringing as much fire as I did last week with my Trey Tucker call. I'm going to stay in Pittsburgh and talk about Russell Wilson. Very similar situation to Aaron Rodgers. The guy is old. He's been around for a while. He's not quite as old as Aaron Rodgers, and he did have a fairly okay season last year once he got back on the field. It's puzzling why he hasn't found a landing spot yet. The fact that Russell Wilson remains unsigned, similar to the Aaron Rodgers situation, makes him a loser. If Pittsburgh is waiting for Aaron Rodgers before they do something with Russell Wilson, that's not good. That doesn't show Russell Wilson that he's really in their plans, especially after moving off of Justin Fields. What if they get rid of Justin Fields and then also don't start Russell Wilson? What does that say about Russell Wilson? He wasn't even good enough to stick around on a team that shuttled off their own quarterback or their other quarterback. So all in all, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson, unless he signs with Pittsburgh, is going to be getting any kind of starter value. And for that, he's just a big loser.
Just a big loser. Let's ride into them to the sunset. Now, I'm going to talk about a guy that's a little more controversial, and let's go. So this move by the Seahawks was more of a head scratcher for me, based off of their off season that just kind of seemed like they're just going in whatever direction they feel on the morning, and picking up Cooper Kupp. It was a decision that for me was a little bit of a weird one. The 32-year-old Kupp's days of dominating football, I think, are behind him. Now he comes into a situation that the offensive line is a little murky. They have a brand new quarterback. They have a very similar skill set wide receiver that's much younger and, in my opinion, a little bit more skilled than Cooper Kupp is in JSN. And it just further complicates the outlook for Kupp in 2025. I think there were a lot better landing spots for Kupp for fantasy football purposes. The potential appears to be limited for a number of reasons. Like I mentioned, the offensive line. It'll hurt his ability to get open. I know Sam Darnold is going to need to rely on quick dump offs, and maybe Kupp will be the beneficiary of that. But I'm also looking for JSN to be a beneficiary of that as well. So they're kind of capping each other's ceiling. I'm looking for JSN to play a little bit more of the outside because he's younger. He has had some success there. But for Kupp, I just think he's declining. His health over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 6 games missed over the last 3 seasons. Just inconsistent production. 32 years old. That's definitely on the age peak here, going way down. And the quarterback question mark as well. Sam Darnold, although he did well last year in Minnesota, I think that was more of a byproduct of the offensive system he was in and Kevin O'Connell's system. And I think that he is the quarterback whisperer. So not saying that a season that Sam Darnold had last year is to be, diminished at all, but I just don't think that he's going to be set up to succeed as prolifically as he did last year. And that just brings Kupp fantasy value in check to me. And I just think that it's not something that I'm going to be investing in based off of all those concerns I mentioned there, Biggs.
It's funny because of the fact that DK Metcalf and George Pickens are so similar. Kanan Smith and Jigba's brother and Cooper Kupp are very, very similar. Last year, I was asked this question last night on a high stakes show that I was on for high stakes fantasy players, and I was asked what Cooper Kupp's effect on Jackson Smith and Jigba would be. And one of the things is we have to assume that Cooper Kupp is going to be fully healthy if he wants to eat into what Jackson Smith and Jigba established last year. But the other thing is that Jackson Smith and Jigba ran 74% of his routes last year out of the slot. That makes him a slot receiver, period. Cooper Kupp last year ran his routes 56% out of the slot or 57% out of the slot, which makes him a slot receiver. So now they have two slot receivers and DK Metcalf is gone and they don't have an outside receiver. So they're going to have to do some positional switcheroo. I think they can exist in the same offense if Cooper Kupp stays healthy for 17 games and they are running him out of the slot more and they think that they can convert Jackson Smith and Jigba more to a flanker type guy out of the Y who's lined up off the line of scrimmage, running in motion and things like that, but still doing his routes from the outside and not the slot. I think that Cooper Kupp could have some of his old upside. He is, a more of a downfield threat than Jackson Smith and Jigba is. But I think it's another situation where you basically just paid money to a carbon copy of what you have at home, and it's not a great situation for him. So I absolutely agree. Cooper Kupp, big loser. Take the L.
Take the L. And hopefully our viewers get some important information out of this headed into, draft seasons coming along. I know we're far away from our drafts, but it's all important information to get now and stay ahead of the game and build our championship. So from all of us here on the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and Biggs, we hope you had a great show. Biggs, take us home like you always do so well.
We hope you win, everybody.
We hope you win, folks. Now.